Welcome, ladies and great women. It's a big honor for me to have so many great aviation women here at the Virtual Ops 2020 Aviation Women's Panel. That's a very exclusive and special session because today we have only one man and many, many women. So I'm here the exclusive minority in this panel. And we have a great topic to talk about aviation in women in aviation. And just to give a background for all the people who can unfortunately not join here live, but who will probably watch later on what we have discussed in these 90 minutes, just some of the airlines the aviation women were working for, and it shows that we have here really all global airlines represented in this panel discussion. And I suggest that we are now giving all our panelists the opportunity to shortly introduce yourself. So we're starting with Aditi, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Aditi. I work for Indigo back here in India, and I manage the crew planning team looking after the rostering and training of pilots and cabin crew. Thank you.
I guess it's over to me, Daniel. Hi, everybody. I'm Anne Cedarhall. I'm now, after 12 years outside of Sweden, actually back in Sweden. I freelance now as a consultant. I've been working in the industry for over 25 years. Hello, everybody.
Anuja, you are next. So we go really like we are writing.
Right. Hi, everybody. My name is Anuja. I'm an Indian right now working at Hanover, located in Hanover in Germany. I've been working in the IT industry for the past 18 years, and last 14 years I'm with IBS Software. And as part of that, I got the opportunity to work with the IT wing of various airlines like Qantas, Air France, KLM, and right now placed as a program manager for a leisure travel group, TUI, their airline operations wing, right now working as a program manager in Germany. Thank you.
So if Ed Lever is not in the call, then Sintra is next.
Okay, hi, my name is Zintra. I used to work, I work for aviation industry for the last 10 years. Part of that has been as a project manager and head of e-commerce of Air Baltic. And then I moved to TUI Systems that develop the airline system, booking engines and stuff for airlines. And I've been working for Austrian Airlines and HANA projects, mostly.
Now we are moving to Brazil.
Yeah, hello, ladies. It's a pleasure to be here with all you. Thank you, Daniel. I'm Gabriela. I am part of the Latam Brazil. I have worked for Latam Brazil for the last 10 years. Currently, I'm part of the project team, but I also work on the OCC as part of the crew team on the planning phase and the tracking phase also. Thank you very much.
Now Gayatri, it's your turn. If she's not on the call, then we move on with Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Martlew. I'm a senior business analyst in IT, working for 28 years in the aviation industry. 22 years in IT. I started my career in British Airways and then I now work for IAG International Airlines Group. My area of domain is within the flight operations and operations space. And for the last few years, I've been working on a program for British Airways to move to their flight crew, where they manage their training, rostering, and the tracking and everything to do with flight crew, really.
Then we're moving over the pond to the US.
Danielle, sorry, Gayatri here. I was on mute earlier.
No, so please take your chance then.
Yeah, so hi all. My name is Gayatri, and I've been working in this industry for the last 13 years, and I'm closely involved with the crew tracking system of IBS software services. And looking forward to hear all your views.
Okay, I guess it's me now.
Absolutely.
I'm Carrie Kennedy. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee, working for FedEx. I run a project management office here for flight ops. Been in the industry for about 35 years with a combination of military and commercial.
Now going further north to Canada. Christine?
I was on mute. I apologize. I said good morning from the north, although it feels like I'm down in Tennessee because it is hot today. My name is Kristen Pegram. I spent almost 20 years in the aviation industry until, of course, Corona hit. I've recently left Air Canada and I found VHH, which is why I'm here. My experience was mostly in technical writing within the maintenance division, although that encompassed pretty much every other part of the air operator and the maintenance provider. And that's enough for now.
Now moving to India. Lata.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Hello, everyone. I'm Lata. I head the delivery wing for one of the strategic business units called Consulting and Digital Transformation in IBS. I've been with IBS for long. 22 years of my career has been with IBS. And we work with many customers, airlines, cruises, travel agents, travel technology companies from east to west. And I'm handling the delivery and project delivery for these customers. Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Adenka. Mauritius?
No, Daniel, I'm sorry to disappoint. I'm for the moment in Montenegro still due to the COVID. Normally based in Mauritius, working currently for Maureva Ltd, which is an airline IT provider. I'm a Chief Innovation Officer and in charge for NDC project on behalf of Maureva. Before Maureva, I spent 15 years in a carrier, so local one in Montenegro Airlines. So participating in this really amazing industry, even if it is hardly hit by this virus for around 20 years, primarily on IT, but also running different commercial projects and negotiating with stakeholders on behalf of the companies.
Since your double country presentation, I know that Montenegro is much nicer than Mauritius. So I think you have selected a better spot.
There you go.
Patricia, now we go to Miami.
To me, wait, is my camera off now?
Yeah, we can see you.
You can see me? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Nikki, or Patricia Wolf. I work for Lufthansa Technik in Miami for the past 15 years, although in between I did work for half the time for Lufthansa Systems. I got up very early today for you guys, or for all of us. And I do mostly marketing and event coordination for our corporate sales team. So whatever comes in our way when it comes to conferences, organization, customers, events, that's me.
Cool. Now we come to our female pilot from India, Priya.
Hi guys, my name is Priya. Thanks for having me. I've been in the industry about 13 years, 10 of which I've spent with Indigo. I fly planes. That's it. Yeah.
Sandhya.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for having me here today. And I'm Sandhya, and I work for IBS Software. I manage the delivery of iFlight Neo Ops and Hub systems, and I've been working on the implementations, the offshore delivery for British Airways and Etihad and Jetstar, Qantas. So wherever there is an ops implementation, I am involved in it. And currently, it's been around 20 years since I started with this industry. And with IBS, with iFlight Neo, it's been 6 years. Thank you.
Now we're going to London, to Sapna.
Hey there, I'm Sapna. Thank you for having me here. Joining on a very wet day in London, but very excited to talk to such a varied panel from every side of the industry. I've been mostly in IT with IBS always from the start, 15 years of experience, and have been lucky to work with a lot of airlines like British Airways, KLM, Lufthansa, Cathay, Emirates, and so on. So it was a great journey, and looking forward to listen to you today and form a great panel. Okay. Bye.
Now going to Vietnam. Tang, are you in the call? Probably joining later. Then we go to Italy. Tulia. Then we move on to Ursula.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. I'm Ursula. I've actually been in the industry now for more than 25 years. I can't believe it. And I've been most of the time working on the commercial side, leading the commercial area, driving change, driving digital, challenging status quo. I worked for airlines from the Lufthansa Group to British Airways to the biggest Ukrainian airlines, latest to Brussels Airlines, Kenya Airways, the latest one, and others. I've also worked on the technology side with Lufthansa Systems and founded my own company, XXA Solutions. Part of the activities I did were part of this 10 years ago now. And also founded a think tank, Think Future, and at the moment founding the Think Future club in order to better help transformation for the industry. Great to meet all of you.
Thank you. And then going to Maria from Colombia.
Hello, good morning. Yes, my name is Maria. I'm based in Miami. I work with Lufthansa, the corporate sales team, as an area developer. This is my 10th year in the industry. 10th year with Lufthansa Technic as well, previously working with the components department. Thank you for having me.
Did we have forgotten any lady or everybody could introduce? Good. You can see also my slides I'm showing? No?
No, I cannot.
No, Daniel.
That's why we didn't know the order on which we should introduce.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. That's still something which is driving me crazy with this Teams. Sorry for that. So hopefully you can see it now.
Yes.
Good. So just showing again the amount of expertise we have here. Usually you should never ask a woman about her age, but it would be, of course, interesting to know how many years of experience we have now here in this panel. Maybe 100, maybe 50. We will double check this and we'll provide the facts after the session. But preparing for the session, I was trying to understand why having so many great women in the industry, having rule of thumb, 50% of human beings on Earth are women, why there are only average in the industry 7% female pilots, why there are only 3 to 6%, depending from the statistics, airline executives. Why are even some airline CEOs believing a female CEO cannot manage such a role? I just want to understand what is really here the issue, and that's somehow now opening the path for the topics I like to discuss with you. And we have here some of the items we think we should touch and try to elaborate today during this panel. So what is the explanation that we don't have 50% of all pilots being female, for example? Open question. I'm throwing you the ball up in the air, and I hope you have an opinion on that.
So Priya, hi, it's Kristen from Canada. Given that you are a pilot and an active pilot, can you share a little bit what was your experience to get to where you are?
Hi, Kristen. Um, my experience is probably not very typical of what you would imagine or know uh, of India, I'm assuming, because in my interactions with people from overseas, I usually noticed as a kind of a stereotype that people have in their minds about how we are culturally and how nuclear families are back here. To answer the question, I think career choice has very large cultural implications, and that's just one of the many things that go into making it. A huge I didn't have an issue because I come from a very liberal family. I was allowed to chase my dreams. Just to give you a background, I was in sales and marketing before I became a pilot. I finished an engineering degree, and I've never really felt any kind of a blockage towards attaining my goal to where I've reached right now. But I mean, I have to say that there's a very small population of conservative countries that allow that kind of growth. Surprisingly, India has a very, very large number of women pilots compared to the rest of the world. That's a statistic that, I mean, it's really hard to explain because in people's minds, the country is really conservative. At least that's what most people think. But I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. It's a combination of availability, of opportunity, and a whole lot of other things. So, yeah, I never had a problem at all. It was smooth sailing for me. I got my job right after my license got issued and all of that. But it's very different in countries overseas. I know for sure people who trained me in New Zealand, for example, took almost 6 years uh, longer than I did to even get jobs in spite of having more experience. So I don't really think it was a gender thing for me here in India. It was more an opportunity-based thing. It was a market that was flourishing, and I just basically made best use of that.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, because according to statistics, Indigo Airlines, Air India, and SpiceJet are the most female pilot percentage having airlines in the world. So by far, so almost double the figure of the industry average. Interestingly, it's not so much also known when you're seeing sometimes statistics. These three airlines are not mentioned. I think United Airlines is then always appearing as number one, but only having, I think, 9% of pilots. So the question is, what can the rest of the industry learn from these Indian airlines? Is there something which we can somehow take as a role model, which we can spread the word? Is there something which you would see can be helpful for other countries and airlines around the world, Priya?
Like I said before, Daniel, it's opportunity based. Someone in Canada, for example, would probably, when you look for a career, the biggest thing that you look for is that you complete a degree or a course or whatever it is you choose to do, and then you get a job because you want to, start making money from what you've studied. Unfortunately, overseas, that doesn't really happen. So you could be learning to fly and be without a job for years on end, which was also the story back here 20 years ago. So I think the first step in the process is to educate people of the availability of aviation as a career. If you don't look at it as a lucrative career, you're not really going to ever think of it as, I mean, having gender equality and things is secondary to just having it as an option, right? So yeah, I don't know if there's anything. If there's, it's a statistic that, to be honest, I really can't explain. All I know, I know the big differentiating factor is the fact that there is huge opportunity. So people can finish school and then say, okay, I'm going to take this the calculated risk of spending, maybe $50,000, $60,000 or even more to get my license because I know I'm going to get a job. And then comes the rest of it. There's no real recipe for this. I don't think, for example, India doesn't have any advertisement for pilots or any preferential quotas to have women on board. It's just happened the way it has. I don't think we've made a specific effort to that end. So to say that we can let airlines overseas in on some kind of secret or any of that, it's just so happened. I don't think there's a real reason for it.
I also believe, if I may add to this, you mentioned stereotypes. I think stereotypes and institutionalized inequalities and politics are probably kind of the way education works, which are reasons for why women, I think not only with pilots, but also in many other jobs, apart from flight attendants, would actually not be present. And I remember I was, most of the time throughout my career, I was the only woman in the executive team. But whenever people asked, and I would say I work for an airline, they say, are you a flight attendant? It's such a stereotype that people still grow up with, I think, even today. And I think it plays a huge role maybe in even making women think about that they can actually do other roles. And I've seen how many, actually particularly women, without me even realizing, where suddenly, even now, young students, I work a lot with students, were probably suddenly saying, wow, actually you showed me that I can do other things. And this is quite amazing, because it's still the case, I think, even today, and even in all kinds of different environments.
Yeah, there is also an unconscious bias coming in. Like women cannot do certain kind of jobs. Maybe over the years, that is also getting slowly changed. Like if you take the different countries who kind of provide education to women, that's increasing. That gender reversal is happening. I think almost 100 countries, they have changed the kind of gender reversal for giving women education. But you consider the job stuff, it's way behind what is the expectation. Maybe like 4 or 5 countries has that gender reversal in place. So slowly it is changing, but not in the way or in the velocity that is required for the age. Yeah.
And that's a very interesting point, actually, Anuja, what you raised. Also, what Priya was saying, there's definitely an opportunity, like around 800,000 more pilots required. There is a pilot shortage in the next 20 years. So it's probably the matter of not reaching out to the right audience and not giving them the right training opportunities. But I was also thinking, like, I just saw a survey done by Embry-Riddle University that was saying that passengers are not very comfortable when it's two women pilots at the cockpit. That was an interesting survey, and I was wondering why. Why passengers might not have that 100% confidence in women operating an airplane. There was a Captain Schulz, if you remember the Southwest Airlines incident, where she safely landed the aircraft. And it seems when the people were going out of the aircraft, they were very surprised to see it was a women pilot who did that. She also had military experience. So also there is this kind of a social stigma that kind of says, yeah, more flight attendant side, not pilot side. So that's another point I wanted to discuss and understand with you.
So going back to India for a moment, and can anybody tell me, because I have to say I'm ignorant in terms of how many operators are in India. Are there a very high number of commercial air operators in India that would allow for the fact that more pilots are required? And given the fact that there seems to be less stigma in India in terms of becoming a pilot, could that possibly explain the higher percentage of female pilots? And does anyone know when that percentage rose?
So I'll answer the first part of that, Kristen. So yeah, it was completely opportunity driven, like I said. It's a conscious career choice. And I have to state here that the trend of the kind of people becoming pilots has changed over the years. If you look at the people who become pilots 20, 30 years ago, they're hardcore aviators, passionate flyers. It wasn't a conscious career choice at that point in time. It is now, and it's opportunity driven. Uh, about Sapna, I'll answer the part about the Southwest airline safe landing and all of that. That is nothing but stereotypes. I mean, people have stereotyped. We've had an episode many, many, many years ago in one of the airlines here where people have chosen to get off the plane because they've seen two women pilots in the flight deck. They actually got off the plane once boarding was complete. And there's nothing. I hope it doesn't take many more safe landings and emergency situations for people to have a little more faith. But I mean, it's just stereotypes. I mean, there's nothing else to explain it. It's
Interesting.
just because.
Priya, in that point, this is Sandhya. Priya, in that point, so I think I read something about NASA doing a study on this, how women, women perform in long flights to space versus men. And it turns out men actually perform in shorter terms, for shorter time periods than women. Women actually have, more endurance skills. They perform better on a longer period. And they're actually saying, maybe the first person in Mars will be a woman and not a man,
Nice.
So it is, yes. So it is actually because it's a longer thing, and they trust women in that flight. So that was nice to hear. But given that, think about commercial aviation, and you've been there, we for me it's just, and I'm an outsider, right? So I know I read about the industry, I know, but I can never be in a pilot seat, right? So from the way that you see, have you come across situations where you think, okay, I could have handled that situation better than, you're talking to a man, and he's a pilot, and you're thinking, I could have handled it better.
Well,
Have you
to be honest, Sandhya, you feel that more when you're not flying as captain. You feel it more on the right seat. So when the captain's doing something silly, right? So I don't have too many chances to feel that because when you move left seat, you're basically the one making all the decisions, and it unfortunately, even though I'm sure it irritates people on the right, you will voice something you're not okay with. It's just a natural process.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm sure a woman will go to Mars, but I assure you, if there were passengers on that spaceship or whatever, it would be a different story.
Right,
Because unfortunately, the same stereotyping and bias would kick in, and it's very complex. And unfortunately, it's not limited to a small population. It's limited. It's a bias that you know I think it's going to take generations, lots of generations, to get rid of it completely. It's just one of those things. I mean,
But I could now also ask the same question, Sandhya, to you, Anuja and Sapna. Is it different to make a project with a female mindset, being a product manager, with a female mindset, and being a program manager, being a woman? Is the way of approaching things also different?
Yeah, a little bit different. We will bring in an empathy flavor to every team we are working with. So I think that is an aspect we would like to bring in everywhere when we are forming a team. So for that factor, I think it's always say that in leadership roles, ladies are proving much better than men.
And have you experienced even a reaction like, let's say you were working with a peer who made already some other projects in the past, maybe with a female project manager, maybe with a male project manager, that you could really feel that he was happy to have again a female peer because he made maybe not a so efficient or nice experience with a male project manager?
Always, Daniel. Even some of the customers also said that always working with lady managers is better. They handle things appropriately. They can multitask. So they feel the team's emotions and bring them together as a one single pack. So many times I have faced direct, got direct compliments from the customer regarding that, Daniel.
Daniel, the multitasking part is very critical because we can juggle. I can tell you, we can juggle, and so and it has come in handy many a times. And when I feel like we don't want everything, or we don't see that everything is going to be in the happy flow. There will be glitches, and we will have to find alternate ways, and we will. I kind of feel like women handle those situations well as well, because they know things are going to go wrong, and I feel like they can adapt and take that alternate course and get where they want to be. It's multitasking is I've noticed that. Yeah.
I think that's a nature thing. I mean, being a woman, you're supposed to be like, you take care of the family, you keep everything together, and you don't lose your head so fast. And that comes handy in your job life too. I mean, just to knowing that, to be more empathetic and breathe before you make decisions, to be able to put everything in one place rather than just by impulse make decisions and not think about what will happen with your kids and your other kid, and that's why I think it's
Am I listening there to some stereotype against men?
What?
No.
Not a stereotype.
No, but I think it's also politic related. I mean, we're not going to talk about politics, but a woman is a mother, and when a woman has to send her son to war, they will think twice. A man will rather send their, This is why women think before. I think, I'm not saying you guys don't think. I believe that a woman makes decision based on a little or other factors rather than just out of impulse.
So I think, Anne, you were first, then we have Jennifer, and then we have Zintra.
I must say, I've come across men who are extremely good at multitasking. I've come across those who are not. I've come across women who are good at multitasking and those who are not. And if I would just say 50-50. And I think it's rather about the quality of being a really good project manager, or being a very good leader, or being especially good in your profession. And so I can't say that, I cannot agree with women excelling actually in this area. It's not my experience.
Zintra is putting the thumbs up. So then first, Jennifer, I think you raised your hand.
I think that she dropped off. Oh no, she joined again.
Okay, so then Latha, you were raising your hand.
Yeah. I just wanted to share a very different dimension. I come from the state of Kerala. I think at least 3 of the other colleagues of mine are here, which clocks 100% literacy. And where women empowerment is practiced in terms of education, job, many aspects. So what I personally experienced is at a certain stage when there was an opportunity to step into a leadership role. Now, that was the time when suddenly a realization came that it was not about society, it was not about the men around you, it was not about the organization you're working with, it was about you empowering yourself. The thought of leadership that you want to see in a man is so ingrained and internalized in you, probably through generations, that you yourself don't see the personality in you to be fitting into a leadership role, taking decisions, the pressure of taking the right decisions, the impact of taking a wrong decision, you being able to inspire the people that you may be leading, balancing lots of things. When you come to in the IT industry, in leadership roles, you are balancing many things: the financial aspects, the business performance, your people, your customer. It is a multitasking within the organization. The other side of personal side is very different. So that realization that you have to empower yourself so that the people around you, the teams around you see a leader in you. That was the biggest realization I had. And because after a certain point in time, if you are a man or a woman, talent and merit and performance should speak. You can be given certain concessions because of, a natural career break you may need in that life cycle. But other than that, once you assume a role, then only talent speaks and when only performance speaks. So that was a very important thing which I felt as a lady or a woman, I had to practice and realize. And then moving away from the prejudice or a stigma that we always say, you don't have to be a towering personality speaking in the loudest of your voice or everything else to be, to be kept apart, you being yourself and, playing the role in fullness was my biggest realization, which I keep sharing with my teams. I just wanted to share that with all of you.
How is it in Brazil, Gabriela?
Hi, I totally agree with she said. The most of part of my, I believe we have to make decisions, and the most of part of my career was in the airline industry, and till now I have never had a female direct leadership. So I have handled the difficulty to believe that I can reach a leadership position in the industry in which most of the leaders are men, at least here in Brazil. So Latam Brazil had a CEO woman during 6 years. She had a very inclusive and closer leadership. And when I saw a woman who reached that position, I feel proud of her. I want to know her trajectory. I want to support her because I feel like it is a victory for all of us because it is not an easy thing to reach it. So, and when she left, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I don't remember, uh, on her speech, she said that she needed to prioritize another aspect of her life because she couldn't balance the CEO life with her own personal life at that moment. So I started to think, why does she has to choose? Why we cannot share all those things in our jobs? So it's one thing that made me think about it.
Wow.
Carrie, how is it in Memphis? You are a leader, so what are you getting as feedback from your team about your leadership capabilities?
Well, I hope they like me. No.
Trust me.
Yeah. So it's a little bit frustrating over the years to be in a mostly male-dominated, leadership position, and I've been usually one of very, very few women in leadership, and there's, in my experience, very few women that make it even further past director, and so it's difficult to kind of break through. Getting people to notice you so that you can break into some of those other positions. I've recently come across this. I've got a background in weather and dispatch and a bunch of other areas, and wasn't even considered for a role that encompassed a whole lot of those areas, which was interesting. They ended up hiring a man that, or tapped a guy. Not even hired. It was, somebody else got tapped to move up into those kinds of positions, a director position, and who didn't even have the same experience. And so those kinds of biases are still out there. And I think as women, we've got to support each other. Kristen was talking a while back ago on one of our happy hours about really forming support groups within your organizations. And so how do you rally each other? How do you pull each other together and lift each other up so that as one or two of us make it further up the food chain in an organization, how do we help pull others up as well? And I think it's really important that women support each other and support men too, and figure out who those allies are that help give you the support. So, you know, there's a lot of male allies out there too. You just have to kind of find them and get them on your side to help encourage growth in leadership positions.
That's an interesting point. I was just shortly talking with Ursula today because she was jumping pretty late into this, and I gave her a bit of heads up about the concept and so on. And then I think, Christine, you were mentioning in one of the virtual happy hours that maybe the next session could be that we're inviting some men and we talk together with them. So you women talk with a group of men, because I think that's maybe also the thing that some men feel threatened if a group of women are teaming up in order to exchange information, to support each other. And maybe some of the weaker men are suddenly thinking, oh my goodness, what is their threat, and try to block it, instead of really teaming up with each other and understanding that's an add-on, that's an asset, that's really something which can help the entire company for growth. So is this where, let's say, also networking with women and also including men, is this something which might be an idea? Because I remember when I was at university, there was a women-only class. I couldn't join, so they kept me out. On the other hand, it was exactly the perfect time in my schedule. So I don't know, would this be possible to have a women's airline club, but having also men joining it?
Yeah. So if I could just jump in for 1 second, go back to something that Carrie said, because my most recent job had my manager not pulled all of the applications and he knew that I had applied, I would not have been passed forward, even though every single thing on my CV, my resume, ticked every single box for him. So we were both appalled, but that speaks to the HR processes, which my former team is, well, maybe I'll get back there in time to help them. Looking into what are the processes. The processes are broken. They've been using the same processes for many years, and a talent acquisition partner, and I'll try to speed this up, a talent acquisition partner who has not worked in a specific field should not be burdened with the task of filtering out resumes when they don't really know what they're looking for. They can't, it's not a direct correlation, blue, blue, red, red, green, green. It doesn't work that way. So Carrie's experience of not moving forward for that is ludicrous, but it's so common. And it probably happens for men as well. And in fact, lots of my former colleagues it's happened to. And the other thing about what Carrie said about empowering and grouping together is one of my former colleagues went all the way down to the daycare age. In Canada, we have daycare or home care outside the home for children under school age. She would bring visual props to her daughter's daycare, so kids under 5 years old, to start talking to them about aviation. In some cases, that may be too young. In some cases, it's perfect. In my case, we started talking to them at high school age. And so please, thank you for allowing me.
Daniel, there's one thing I felt that for anything to succeed, there has to be the creative and the empathetic side of women attributes, and the the practical and the analytical intelligence that manly attributes bring in. So it has to be a combination that work well together. Both of us have good attributes that let business go forward. And one thing it might sound kind of silly, but to me, a woman and a man is not actually the physical characteristics, it's a spirit. So there might be men with these kind of attributes and women with manly kind of attributes. So it's more of that kind of, I would always term it as women attributes and man attributes. And I think both of them have to gel together for any kind of project or business to succeed. And so I really believe that that kind of a group of men and women together helps. Plus these kind of decisions that are taken, not suiting or helping women's growth, is mainly because the majority of leadership roles are taken by men, and the manly attributes don't really understand womanly attribute kind of decision making, and they don't appreciate it. So that's because the percentage of women are lesser in all fields, be it IT or be it on the pilot or airline operations side. We need to understand those kind of attributes and how they really help towards progress of business.
I think as well from my experience, sorry, it's Jen here. From my experience, I've seen lots of men promoted from within the organisations. They might have less experience, or you've worked alongside them and they don't have the right attributes. But the key thing that I find is more about the male attitude. They're more they seem more natural at selling themselves, promoting themselves, and saying how good they are at something. Whereas I think me, certainly, and my experience of other females that I've worked with, that they want to be realised and they want that to be noticed without them having to point that out. And I think that we need to get better at doing that. And the same is asking for more money. You know, it's a global problem where men are paid typically more than women in a lot of industries, but is that partly because the females just go, okay, that's all right then, I'll accept that. So I don't think it's necessarily about the skills. It's that we're not good salespeople necessarily, and I might be overgeneralizing there, but that's what I witnessed. That's how men get on better in the industry I work in. And I also find myself that especially when I was younger, being blonde and female, if you had long hair, you weren't listened to and you had to just sit in the corner and be quiet. And thankfully my personality didn't put up with that. But I did actually go and get my hair cut 15 years ago, quite short, just to say, I'm not going to let that make any difference. But I think that side of things has got a bit better, but I do fundamentally think we need to be much better at selling ourselves. And one more thing, actually, I've worked with a lot of men who don't have quite as much integrity as you or I might have. And I know this sounds awful, blaming on men, because I think women are this equally as bad. But many people have took on board my work and sold it as themselves and progressed a lot quicker. And I've just sat there and let them do it as well, which is my fault. Yeah, sorry.
I'd like to add to that, Jennifer. I think you're spot on. This is exactly what I've witnessed as well, that women are, I would say, quite poor at promoting themselves, very poor at taking center stage. This is something that I see very frequently with men. They feel very comfortable about going up and talking even about topics that they don't know much about. Which is really like politicians or, you know, people who are good at promoting themselves. And I again and again and again see it with women. So yeah, the same experience. And I think also I want to echo what Carrie said, that there is this, that you're not being seen, right? And that is why we have to jump up and do the center stage, and why you have to, like in my case, it's always about that I do know the facts, right? And I have done this and I have worked there, and, you know, I do know this better. So
I have really now the privilege, because usually when my wife is having her girlfriends coming to our house and then they are talking about men, I cannot listen to it. But now I can finally listen to what you are talking about men, and yeah, I think it's really amazing. And all of that I can really sign off, and that's really true. Yeah, thank you for that.
Well, now
privilege is always invisible, Daniel.
And actually, I just have I have a little story, and to what Carrie was saying earlier, right? Jennifer was saying earlier, you know, how they think that, okay, you know, women are not supposed to know that, right? You know, stuff like that. So there was a time when I was living in the US, and we had the old dial-up connection. Okay, this was 2003-4 time. Okay, and there was this brand new thing called DSL, and we wanted to get it. You know, I always had the computer. I'm in IT. I have it. So so the DSL guy came, and he wanted to install the software. There was a time we had to install the software and stuff. So he was installing the software, and when he was about to leave, I said, hold on, I have Windows 2000 as well. You need to install in the other operating system. And he's like, oh, okay, this is Windows 95, but you have Windows 2000 as well. And I said, yes, because I work in IT, I need that for my server stuff. And he said, oh, that's good, because most women don't even know they have one operating system. So you have two. So it's that. It's prejudice, and just looking down, I don't know, I was like, yeah. So I agree with that aspect. So there is a lot of that going on, that women can do, men can do, women can't do, and that kind of thing. But I do think there is a higher bar for females. Actually, I wanted to mention that when Lata was speaking earlier, and because I do think personally there is a higher bar, and women have to work a little harder than men to get the same output. I don't know what this forum thinks in general of that, but it's just my perception.
Gayatri had put up her hand earlier.
Yeah.
Hi. Yes, Sandhya, I would agree with you in saying that women do have to work a bit harder in actually getting things, the same level. And one thing, the time I put up my hand was when Jennifer was saying about the pay difference between men and women. And yes, that is something significant that I would like to know everyone's opinion, because I have felt that you would be doing the same job, you'd be putting in the same hours, but still, if you look up on an offer that's put to a man and a woman, there could be difference in that, even if it's exactly the same profile. And I don't know why. Is it because it's being put forward by a man? I mean, whoever is giving that offer is a man. I don't know, is that the reason? Or is it because that generally people think that women can't perform? So we know as a group that women can multitask, women has their own qualities, but is it that the world thinks that women are not worthy enough to be paid equal to men? But I mean, that's more of a serious topic, I think, and it exists in every part of the world. So why that difference?
Yeah, but that's an interesting topic. I just remember that the actress from House of Cards was complaining that she was not having the same like the actor, and then of course the question is how you deal with the situation. So you can of course say, then I'm not continuing to play anymore. The question is, do you have another opportunity? Or as it was mentioned earlier, men are better to speak up and to pretend that they're... So that's then a thing. Are women then easier accepting it because they try to seek for harmony instead of the confrontation? Is this exactly what men have to learn, that if you say, hey, no, I want to have more, and if you're not giving me what I'm deserving, then I'm not doing this job? I think that's maybe something where sometimes women are more defensive, and that's where then maybe the mean men are benefiting from it with the thinking, oh, I'm saving some costs for the company, I get a bonus for it because I have achieved the target. At the end, of course, you have a more frustrated woman maybe at the end working in the organization.
Maybe scared easily that if I let go of this offer, I won't get another one. So just accept what you are getting rather than aiming high.
Yeah, actually, I wanted, if possible, to put something in from my side. I come from a country where World War II basically killed quite a lot of population, and mostly men. And for us, that meant that women took over a lot of power, a lot of education, and most of the white-collar jobs in Latvia is covered by women. And it's not all black and white, because what I've learned that women can sometimes be more cruel and more inconsiderate than men, forming gangs if you're an outsider and pushing your own kind out.
Yes.
Interesting point. So what are the other women saying? You see, we are the mean, we are the weak, and we are exactly threatened from what Sintra was saying. Is it, Sintra?
I think that historically women, two things. Historically, women have not been in positions of power. That's a huge generalization, but it's true, as is borne out today. Sometimes when they are put in positions of power, they've had to do so by physically and emotionally crawling their way to the top and becoming very tough. And this comes from, I spent 18 years in maintenance, and you learn to be like one of the guys. So sometimes you take on more of an abrasive manner in order to do that. And perhaps when you get to that position, you might be very protective of it. And the other side is some people are just jerks. Some people are just not nice, and their attitude comes out. Perhaps they feel comfortable to have their attitude come out. I mean, just go on social media and read some of the comments, even in mommy groups, they're tearing each other down rather than pulling each other up. One of my favorite memes is, if you see another woman and her crown is crooked, straighten it for her, pat her on the back and say, good job.
Maria, what do you think about this from your Colombian roots, now living in the US? I think that's also a very special perspective, like Anuja living in Germany and Sapna living in UK, because you are coming from an educational system, and on the other hand, you are now experiencing maybe the other pattern from the other country. Are there some similarities or also some differences?
I have three things to say. First of all, I can't relate to Jennifer, but from the Latina perspective, I'm the Latina one. I'm the one that smiles, that dances, that has the flavor. But when they realize that I'm an engineer, they are like, wow, like if they couldn't understand how I was able to do that. And then like when I have points that I want to like put on the table and that I want to discuss without being confrontational, it's like a surprise for some of them, because they play with this stereotype. They put the tag on me, and then they see me as a colleague doing my job, and it's difficult. I see them struggling with that. Not all of them, but some. So I had to live with that, and also to live with the emotional stereotype. When I'm passionate about things, I move my hands, right, and I raise my voice. It's my way, but it's not that I'm emotional or hormonal. It's just the way I communicate, and then how to make my message come across more than the prejudices they have against this stereotype. It's difficult for me sometimes, so I had to learn to deal with it. But it's quite difficult. Also, when you ask about the difference between like a woman and a man in a project management position, I often see they are more competitive. You mentioned already, like more confrontational, and they're already focused on the next step, like very alpha, very like they do this, but because this is gonna bring them the next position, the possibility to show off. And I see women in those positions, they just want to do the job. They want to keep harmony. Of course, we are career-oriented people. Of course, we think about the future, but we just want to do a good job and keep harmony in the team. I don't see them doing that much. They are just centering themselves. And if there's no harmony, who cares? It's a confrontational world, so they push it. So that's a little bit the difference I see. And I think that sometimes they are rewarded. They are perceived as, oh, yes, this is what we need, like a strong man to lead us. And why not a person that can keep harmony and can keep a team together? I'm not sure if this other attitude is rewarded or perceived as a good thing, not by all men in leadership positions. And then my third point was, I work in an industry or in a company where leadership leaders are promoted from within, right? So what I see is, and they often question themselves, why don't we have more women in leadership positions? But I see how they develop the leaders. So I see how men are developed slowly, but I don't see them doing the same for women. Then they say, why then don't apply? We have this leadership position and majority of applicants are men. Well, it's because you've been developing them for years. disregarding women. Maybe things are changing now a little bit, but I don't see companies accompanying the process of a person, of women, in the same way as they do for men. That's the 3 points I wanted to share.
Thank you. Aditi, you are the boss of many men, because you are, as a crew scheduler, you create the roster for many male pilots. Are they perceiving you as their boss because you are also influencing their lifestyle?
Yes, we get a lot of discussion around it, even within the teams, outside of the team, like within OCC, within the operations, within the working teams and all, and along with the crew members from pilots and everyone. We have a lot of interaction. So I think, and I've been hearing for all this while, but I don't know whether it's India, whether it's Indigo, but I strongly feel that in Indigo, the entire experience is very different. And like even within the leadership, I see about 30% of females being within the leaders, and a lot of teams are being led even in IT or operations or flight ops and other teams. Even within like the leadership that we have a lot of women population there. And regarding the pay, I see like equal distribution, like everything is basis the work that you're doing and not the gender or the age. So it's not even age, yeah. Like when you talk about discrimination, then it's not just the gender, age also comes as a bar, but it's all work and performance and talent that everyone else has been bringing up versus being a female or not. So yeah, I think it's a little different at Indigo because also one, like you said, Danielle, initially that the highest number of pilots, female pilots, are in Indigo. So traditionally, our founders and all our leaders have always really influenced us and really thought through and driven this as a campaign. And like in one of the VHH, I was bringing it up that we have these small girl power batches everywhere that all our cabin crew, flight attendants, they all wear it across the flights. And a lot of passengers look at it, smile, and they've started buying those tags and being the ambassadors to show what the girl power really is. So I think things are changing now.
So we need more Indigos kind of airlines around the world.
Yes,
And
definitely. In fact, like I would talk about my personal experience. My bosses have been always very, very nice to me, and they've always never used this as a reference. One point I definitely would agree to that being a woman, always the women always have to put in more efforts just to prove it a point, just to say that nothing is about being easy for a lady, because a lot of people keep bringing that point that you know what, you're a girl, that's why you get away with it, but that's not the case. So we always have to work extra harder and make more efforts, be it the team, be it outside, be it to the leadership, that we're not someone who's just growing or just doing all our stuff and getting it easy. We're working hard towards it. And we definitely don't like being called and probably bringing up the topic of gender equality everywhere. We don't like to flaunt it. In our hearts, we know we're trying hard.
Wow, amazing.
Does anyone know how much of the commercial pilots come from military, actually? Because if, like in historical terms, it was mostly military personnel or military pilots that become commercial pilots, that would explain a bit of a discrepancy between the male and female, because only in the later times the pilots actually started coming from specialized schools of the commercial pilot schools.
That's interesting. I think that's an interesting data point. But on the other hand, what was said earlier, that many men were dying during the war and then women took over, they were then also partially, of course, piloting if they were capable, already trained for that. But that would explain maybe why this is maybe the historical approach, but over the time, for me, it's still striking why it is still a news in the industry. We have an all-women pilot or cockpit. That's for me not the news anymore. I think that should be normal. But on the other hand, I'm reading it almost every month somewhere And I think if we still have this as a discussion point, then we are not really progressing in this topic altogether.
Agree on that.
By the way, maybe that's a very bad joke, but yesterday I was telling to one of my former colleagues, maybe that's already starting point to have the wrong wording for something, because it's called cockpit. And if we want to put some hands into it, then of course that's also maybe starting point why we have not so many female pilots.
That may not perhaps be the reason, but language is definitely important.
Yeah, I was also reading that the majority of pilot trainers are also male, and then if the female is making a mistake, it's more negatively judged than a male is making the same mistake. So again, just repeating what was said earlier, that women always have to do more in order to be compared on the same level like men, and that's maybe we need more female trainers and check pilots to get the pilots up in the air. But on the other hand, also when I'm remembering where I'm primarily working with a female in an airline, I think many crew planners are female, because they were earlier maybe flight attendants, where in the ops control I more recall to have primarily men. But on the other hand, one of the most efficient airline in the world, Ryanair, I remember 2 ops controller, female, were controlling 400 aircraft. So that's one sample. I think also LATAM is pretty female, even I would say. So there are some samples in the industry where you have a lot of females having the control of the entire airline. Unfortunately, it's not so much published because nobody's talking about it, because that's all behind the scenes. So I think that's something which needs to be changed, to just talk about what is already achieved, to create the confidence that people are not having this cognitive dissonance when they are suddenly seeing a female from the airline where they expect a male.
Yeah. Medlenka, you had something you wanted to say, I think?
Oh yeah, I followed the discussion and it's been really interesting so far. So I can second a lot of points that all of you made. But at this point, since I wanted to say different words at different time of your discussion, I'll just share one by one, or maybe share with you how my career went on and about the background where I come from. Ursula made me smile when she said, "Oh, you are working in an airline. You must be a flight attendant or a stewardess." That's a really common one, and I think I've been told that more than a handful time in a different countries, in a different surroundings. So in country where I come from, and back then it was Yugoslavia, so it's ex-Yugoslavia now. When it came to studies, all of these discussions that we are hearing now about getting more female to go to STEM approach, that was inexistent. It was really equally kind of split. You could do whatever you want, provided that you had a talent for it. If you are female or a male, it really didn't matter. So I finished applied mathematics and programming. It was pretty much half of us during my studies, but with the main kind of difference. So I went to applied programming, not a pure mathematics where I would end up as a professor. And when it came to top student, it was me and 2 guys. On the other side, where there was professors, it was mainly girls. So what happened towards this point, when we started to choose our careers, I went to IT and IT engineering and programming, and I was pretty much the only one from my generation. I mean, I finished as a top in my class, but for me at that time, it wasn't really anything that I thought of. It was just a choice. We didn't have all of this topic back in our minds to consider, okay, 10 of you girls went to be in education and to be professors and maybe do some simple business analytics, why I went straight ahead to really be an IT engineer and go through that stream. On the other side, my approach was, I was doing the job. I was not targeting the place. Okay, I want to be an IT manager in this company. I want to go to C-level. I want to do this. It was not that. I just was taking project after project and going up to the ladder came with it. In Montenegro Airlines, even if it was a male environment or boys club, so to speak, because I was sitting for a long time in C-suite, there was only 3 of us, ladies. But on the other side, I was given completely freedom to make decision on my own and to do the job the way I want it to be it done. So I got support when I asked for it, and I wasn't considered to be less capable to do a strategy for that airline than any other guy that sit in that C-suite at the time. And then I, of course, changed the company and came to the company where females are majority in the management. So at the time when I joined Maureva, there was about 60% of directors that were female there. Completely different approach and completely different atmosphere and approach to how you run the business. But again, this is what you see at one. But also when it comes to technical side, even in Maureva, there's a lack of females, but not because they wouldn't hire, because again, there's majority of the women in the company. It's more on a lack of the resources. So it's a kind of fine balance in all of it.
Talking again about the percentage of leadership, female women, female leaders, how much is also playing the family and getting children and taking care and being, of course, responsible for the birth, because it's not the man who can take this role. Is this maybe one of the reasons, and which can be also used as an excuse, that while you are maybe out of the business for this period of time where you cannot go to work, where you have to take care of a newborn, is this playing an important role, that exactly being out of the game, of the battle, the man can exactly take over because they can network, they can somehow defend their fences and their kingdoms? Is this maybe the main criteria, that female leaders are so rare?
Yeah, but there are mandatory armies in so many different countries that get the guys out of the market for 2 years where they have to serve the army. So we could agree that that's their low point. Now it's rarer and rarer, but I mean, let's take average 2 kids, that's 2 years. But
that's an interesting point, but that on the other side, they go to the army, they stay there for, say, even 2 years. Usually it's far less than that, but that's it. They are out for 2 years, they come back and they continue. You get a family, you get the kids, you are mom all your life. You just take care of your kids, and it's repetitive. So it's much bigger engagement there.
But they are dads all their life as well. I mean,
yes,
you share.
The military
I agree
service,
with that, but
the military service you do when you're young, and I think in order to become a leader, that's more than maybe as older you get. So that's, I think, even you can go as a female to the military service, and still you have also other challenges. But I think if you get your baby with 30 or 40, it's not comparable with the military service, which a young man had with 20 or 25 years.
Well, I had a friend who was a flight attendant with one of the Middle East airlines. So since we touched this point of how much dependent a baby is to the mother and how it changes our physical attributes as well, I remember how much she was anxious about losing her job because there were some dimension measures that needed to be met in order to continue employment with that certain airline as a flight attendant. And she unfortunately lost her job due to the same reasons, because her physical dimensions had changed beyond the 28, 32 or 34, whatever. So that was unfortunate, whereas her male counterparts did not face those kind of challenges.
Nope. There are things that have been imposed on women since the beginning of time, simply because we have the ability to produce children. However, not everybody has the ability to produce children. I have many friends who don't have children. They're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They're not in C-suite. They are not married. They don't even have a cat. So while some of these differences within the C-suite, et cetera, can be explained, not explained, can be somewhat attributed to wanting to focus on many things at once. What about the ones who don't have anything other than their job to focus on? How do you explain that they're not in C-suite? So it's really, it's frustrating. I've got to tell you that. It's frustrating to see. Something that Air Canada started doing quite a number of years ago was they had a leadership programs, different leadership programs. And I was actually going to start one before the pandemic occurred, but you had to be recommended. You couldn't just apply and say, I would like to learn how to be a manager. I would like to be mentored. You had to be recommended. So unless you are, I used to call myself a big mouth. Now I call myself an upstander as opposed to a bystander. Unless you made yourself known to people, as I did over time, you wouldn't be considered for these programs. You wouldn't be put forward. You wouldn't be suggested. So you would just stay, where you were. So and based on some of the things I've heard from other people on the panel, it sounds like this is a common experience in every country in the world, with the exception of perhaps Latvia and India, where I'm flabbergasted that that's going on. And perhaps we could do, I don't know, a panel with Indigo and pull information out of them. And Maria, I speak with my hands too, because, it makes people remember me. But I think there's a few people that had their hands raised and perhaps didn't have a chance to make their points.
But that just gives me the idea, maybe we should have a virtual happy hour 7.0, which is a spin-off of the 3.0, that we are not making a country presentation just about the country, but being a woman in that country. And then Aditi can explain what does it mean to be a female Indian and all this stuff. And then Sintra is repeating her 36 letters from the Baltic perspective. Maybe that's something we can discuss.
Well, I'd like to do this again, that's for sure, because this is going way too quickly. So please.
I just wanted to make.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think what Christine was saying, I think very valid actually. I think like what I mentioned earlier, constraints will be there, and these are there. I mean, you can't deny it. But thinking for yourself, if you want to become, something, that setting a goal for yourself is very important. Otherwise, even when constraints are not there, you will not make it. So, Daniel, me, Anuja, and many others in this call, we're part of IBS Software. This is an organization where 38% of women folks are there. Out of our 3,000 plus employees, 38% are women. And this is, in the larger population. When it comes to senior management, this shrinks to something like a 15%, and still higher up it reduces. Yes, one aspect is this constraint. One aspect is, today when IBS is trying to bring women leadership to higher levels, we have to make a conscious effort to convince the women. Believe me, it is convince the women, make them believe, to find time to come for initiatives, or to come into a mentorship. But it is improving, tremendously improving. The ladies in this call who are speaking up with a lot of conviction and pride, I think that is what we want. And I think there, even if 10 or 8% of your male colleagues are against you, look at those 90% who are supporting you. I think we need to credit to all those men and women who are supporting you. So that's what I would say. While constraints will be there, set goal for yourself and make it happen. I think men or women, we can make it happen. Women has little bit more efforts to do, which is true, because that is about convincing yourself and then them, standing up as a leader or as a decision maker. But just go for it. That's what I would say.
If you can't give birth, you can't do everything.
Say it again, Nikki.
I believe if you women, I mean, I don't have kids, I'm not planning to, but if you can give birth, you can manage everything.
Yeah. Seriously.
And girls, I don't know if you agree. I want to know your opinion about it. But I believe that we need to valorize when the recognition or when a man valorize our space, even if it is at work or in a places like that. I don't know, but on my reality, it's not a common thing. When a man give us space or give us a place to talk. So I remember now a story. The day that I met Daniel, I was invited to a place and some guy said me I shouldn't go because I didn't speak very good. So I felt like discretized. I think that's the word. And I thought I given up. I should go home and that's okay. But I didn't. And when I came to the place, I sit down beside Daniel. And through him, I'm here with all of you. So I won't give up, never. So I think we need to valorize that space. Thank you, Daniel.
Absolutely. It's all about giving opportunities to women as well as grabbing opportunities also. So we have to take over these opportunities as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add some additional dimension to all of this? It's Ursula, and I have to admit I was initially very hesitant to join this panel because in spite of agreeing with everything we've been saying, I've always said, what is the purpose of talking about it? What is the purpose of this? On the one hand, why it's realizing those issues. And the other thing is I see that the female part is just one group which has this problem. And I can give you even an example of a previous boss of mine. He at the time was CEO, but before he had been all of his life a pilot. And he actually, at some stage when he left, he said to me, I would really like to see you become CEO at an airline, but I know you will have the same problems I had. I had the stigma of a pilot. You have the stigma of a woman. And it's an interesting example. And I have several others because I worked in so many different countries and always for the national company, never as an expat coming into this company, into this country. So I also had a lot of issues about nationality. So you are actually disadvantaged twice as a woman and in terms of nationality. I've seen lots of other, I think, groups which had problems. And I think if you then go back, and I go back to my initial question, first of all, where does this come from? Because I think all of it, and we discussed several items from stereotypes to society, education, and so on. But I also think it's that as long as organizations still work with the old structures, it starts with the boards, which usually have a very, very old chairman, of course. And even if it's a woman, the word chairwoman doesn't really exist yet. So then it's always about this, what do you choose? But it's also still all of the governances in the most, and this is not only for aviation, are still very much set up for this old world of hierarchy of power that all of you were mentioned before. And as long as this doesn't change, right, at the same time, if I love to always go back to think about the customer. And if you see maybe the one good thing COVID finally, hopefully has brought, and there is a risk that it doesn't because of all of this government support, is that everybody, even in the boards, realizes that really radical change is needed. And it's not just about a little bit of digital and maybe, yes, we need to invest a little bit more in a website. It's not this, it's much more. And it's suddenly about collaboration. Who is the best? It's not anymore who has to participate in this because he is the manager or he is XYZ. It's about what can he or she contribute. And I think that's the more this changes now as that realization. And I think that's where the big financial problems now help, because people are really disoriented. This will help. But also when I think about, and I just think about the customers, and I always like to go back to the customers who in the end are crucial for any business to get the business, and even the customers as the people working in the businesses. Many of the young people today, the students starting, they don't want to work in this business with all of the old men and hierarchies, and you can't do anything, and you are not allowed. They don't want to. This is why so many young students actually, they just say, I do a startup, I try this, and they try to avoid this. The other thing is, it's often forgotten who are decision makers about travel. If I go back to our industry, or influencers, you see how important women are in that respect. If I go back to the female part of this, so this helped me to also say it is actually worthwhile to also think about this more. And of course, whilst it's interesting to have a shared experiences, and whilst the more women also are in positions where they travel, I've had experiences several times, and the first one was when I actually even fully paid, because I'd always been working in airlines, it was discounted, when I first fully paid for a business class ticket with Virgin Atlantic, but I had several other occasions where I felt I was actually treated so badly. And I thought, what happened here? Why did they treat me this badly? And this even by women. Regardless, probably the men, the male flight attendants, I often found were actually treating me more in line with what you would expect. It's, I think, because they are not used to female travelers, and above all, not to female travelers in business class, for example. And this is, I think, even why, if you then think about, I worked in lots of, the travelers are normally also international ones from different cultures, different nationalities, different race. And if this is not represented in the organization, it's not a surprise that it's completely forgotten who they are and to take care of them. And this is actually when the financial problems even start. So this is why it's so important to also have talent, and not only female, but diversified talent, diverse talent in the organization. And it starts as simple as, I remember when I joined Brussels Airlines, it was a completely kind of Flemish company, but the French part of the country was a huge part of the customers, and the Africans were a huge part of the customers, and they didn't really know them. So only, I think, by coming from that also logical perspective and giving the reasons, it will help to also change. Someone mentioned the HR aspect, and to give the reason to change, because there is no reason to just say, now we need to have more women, but they need to realize this. And hopefully COVID and the current crisis will help to get a bit more rational with all of this, and female as one of this. Sorry for taking this so long, but it really made me think, what does it mean? And I also found one figure, which is interesting. If you look at how many male flight attendants there are now, it's about, I think, in every fourth, at least, in some countries more, flight attendant is now male. Whilst we were talking earlier on, Daniel had the figures. I think the highest one in a country was 15%. In average, it's probably 5% of pilots are female. I think this is maybe also a message which just shows and confirms what many people, this stand up and go for it, which I think Kerstin just mentioned, and others. It's about also taking this place, taking it your way, but taking this place. That's, yeah, this was just to add this additional dimension to the discussion.
Thank you, Ursula. So
Thank
Nikki,
you.
you were already writing something in the chat notes, so you can maybe formulate your suggestion, maybe also with your voice, if you like.
Say that again.
What were you
Say
writing?
again?
What did I say?
Yeah.
I think somebody suggested to make another women's panel, but the question is, do we keep it in this format? Do we want to invite also some male guests? Do we have enough topics for women's only? So that's exactly what we should agree. And also Ursula wanted to know what is the purpose and the objective. That's one of the objectives, to agree what is next.
I think we've really missed some of the topics as well, Daniel. I would really like to discuss much more about how we can improve how we help one another, because I don't think female networking is very good. I think it can be actually counterproductive sometimes. And of course, I work typically in projects where there are 48 guys and 2 women, kind of stuff. And I think we don't do well in this area, right? And how can we improve? And how can we, try? And when people who want to be mentored reach out to me, it's predominantly male. It's guys who reach out to me and ask for mentorship, and very, very rarely women, only 2. So I'd like to discuss that.
Yeah, so I think we also had more suggestions for this panel discussion, and Carrie and me, we were somehow trying to find the right mix from the amount of suggested topics and the amount of time we have available. So let's agree on another session, and yeah, it would be great to continue this panel. The question is, are we finding some men from the Old Boys Club which we can invite to the session, and that you can put them on the roast, but also this fatigue risk management topic, I think that will be very interesting. And also I think Latha can also maybe explain more what IBS, but also she is doing in order to empower women in IT. I think we have plenty of topics. So yeah, I would be happy to accommodate this. I think I was really amazed from this presentation. Also, thank you to Carrie, who helped me to connect with you and to get some more information from all the women. And I think if you are spreading the word and you like to invite more ladies, then maybe we can also widen the list of airlines we are then kind of representing in terms of experience. So I really have to thank you for all your great contribution, for the energy and the spirit. And I hope that some of you will also join the Virtual Happy Hour series, because then you don't have to wait too long that we are all coming together again, because you can select the dates for the upcoming Virtual Happy Hours at your convenience. And then, yeah, would be great to have you soon again. Thank you very much. I was very, very much nervous. Now I'm a little bit more calmer, and you were very nice, also to the only man in this panel discussion. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.